Welcome to Space, the final frontier above and beyond an open-minded channel, where we explore the strange incidents that have landed somewhere in the beyond. These incidents teeter on the edge of believable, yet never seem to get fully solved. Tonight's incident takes us to the quiet hills of northern Italy, December 6, 1978, a night that would change one man's life forever. The man at the center, Pier Fortunato Zanfretta, age 26. Job, night watchman in northern Italy. Location, near Torreglia, Genoa. Just a guard doing routine patrols. The 26-year-old security guard was not a scientist, not a believer in UFOs, and not a man seeking attention or fame. Just a man doing his job, patrolling remote properties outside of Genoa, alone. The first encounter. Late at night, the hills outside Genoa were silent. No wind, no movement, just darkness stretching across the countryside. That's when Pier Fortunato Zanfretta arrived at a secluded property known as Casa Nostra. At first glance, it looked routine, but something felt off. The gate was already open. That shouldn't have been possible. Zanfretta slowed his vehicle, headlights cutting across the property. The beam of light crawled over the gravel, the trees, the walls of the villa, and then he saw them. 4 lights, hovering, not flickering like distant aircraft, not moving like anything he recognized, just hanging there, silent, watching. He radioed it in, at first calm, controlled, a possible break-in. But even as he spoke, something in his voice began to change, because the closer he got, the less this looked like a crime scene, and the more it felt like something waiting for him. He stepped out of the vehicle. The air felt wrong, heavy, like the night itself was pressing in. The front door of the villa stood open. No signs of forced entry, no noise inside, just darkness. Then, a glow, faint at first, coming from beyond the structure. Zanfretta moved toward it, slowly, cautiously, and when he cleared the edge of the building, he saw it, a massive object, resting just beyond the villa. Oval in shape, glowing a deep, unnatural red, roughly 10 meters across, no visible seams, no landing gear, no sound, just there. His breathing changed, his voice over the radio no longer steady, and then movement. Something stepped out of the darkness near the craft, then another, and another. They were too tall, far too tall, nearly 10 feet in height, towering over him. Their bodies, thick, unnatural, skin that looked almost scaled or mottled, catching the red light in a way that made it seem alive. Their eyes wide, yellow, triangular, reflecting back at him like something not meant to be seen. And their feet, clawed, not human, not even close. That's when the panic hit. Not gradual, not creeping, instant, total. Over the radio, his supervisor heard everything. The breathing, the shifting gravel beneath his feet. And then, Zanfretta's voice, breaking, unraveling. They are not men. A pause, long enough to feel something had gone terribly wrong, then louder. They are not men. What came next was not a sentence, not a report, not even words, just a scream. Raw, uncontrolled, cutting through the static, and then nothing. The radio went dead. Search teams were dispatched immediately. Time passed, minutes, stretching into something longer. When they finally found him, Zanfretta was lying on the ground, unconscious, his body rigid, as if locked in place by fear itself. When he came to, he was disoriented, barely able to explain what had happened. But the scene around him told its own story. The ground nearby had been flattened, not trampled randomly, but pressed down, as if something immense had rested there. In the soil, investigators noted strange impressions, patterns that didn't match boots, didn't match animals, just shapes. And it wasn't just him. Across the region that same night, dozens of people reported lights in the sky, moving silently, hovering, appearing where nothing should have been. Days later, when Zanfretta was placed under regressive hypnosis, the story continued. He claimed the encounter didn't end outside the villa. He said they took him inside the craft. He described a room filled with light, but no visible source, walls that didn't have edges, a space that felt wrong, like it didn't belong to this world. The beings were there, closer now, watching him, studying him. He claimed they communicated, not with words, but directly into his mind. Images, impressions, understanding without language. And then, the examinations, not described in clear detail, but enough to suggest something invasive, something deliberate, something that wasn't about curiosity, but purpose. Some accounts say he later referred to them as Dargos, not a name he recognized, not a word he knew, but something that stayed with him. The second encounter. December 27, 1978. Just weeks later, after the fear, after the reports, after the questions that never found answers, it happened again. Same man, same job, same lonely roads cutting through the hills outside Genoa, and a night that felt too quiet. Pier Fortunato Zanfretta was back on patrol, maybe trying to convince himself the first incident had an explanation, a mistake, a misinterpretation, anything but what he remembered. Then, and without warning, his car died. The engine didn't sputter, didn't struggle. It just stopped. The headlights dimmed, then held. The dashboard flickered. And outside, the darkness seemed to close in. Zanfretta grabbed the radio. This time there was no calm introduction, no measured explanation, just panic. His voice came through fast, breathing uneven, words breaking over each other. He reported the failure, said something wasn't right, that the air felt different. And then, the fog. It didn't roll in naturally, didn't drift across the road. It formed, thick, sudden, unnatural, swallowing the trees, the road, the world beyond the windshield. Visibility dropped to almost nothing, just a wall of shifting gray pressing in from every direction. Over the radio, the dispatcher tried to keep him talking. He tried to anchor him, but Zanfretta's voice was already slipping. He said he could see something, movement inside the fog, shapes, too large to be human. Then, static, a sharp burst, and the radio cut out completely. Once again, teams were sent out, but this time, conditions were worse. Rain began to fall, steady, cold. The roads turned slick. The fog lingered in patches, refusing to lift. Searchers called his name into the darkness. Lights swept across the trees. Engines idled in the distance. But for a while, there was nothing. Then, they found him. Zanfretta was no longer inside the car. He was several meters away, standing, but barely. When they reached him, he didn't respond right away. His body was rigid, his expression distant, like he was still somewhere else. When they finally got close enough to touch him, they noticed something that didn't make sense. His skin was hot, not just warm, hot, as if he had been exposed to intense heat or energy. But the rain had been falling for some time. Everything else was soaked. The ground, the trees, the search team themselves. Zanfretta's clothes were completely dry. No moisture, no dampness. Nothing to suggest he had been standing out there in the storm. Then someone noticed the impressions, pressed deep into the softened earth nearby, were footprints, not boot prints, not tire marks, not anything easily explained. They were too large, too deep, as if something incredibly heavy had stood there or moved through the area just moments before. The spacing between them, unnatural. The shape, unclear, but unmistakably deliberate. Searchers looked at each other, No one said it out loud, but the same thought was there, the same one from weeks before. When Zanfretta recovered enough to speak, and later under hypnosis, he described something chillingly familiar. The fog hadn't hidden the truth, it had revealed it. He claimed the shapes in the mist were the same beings, the same towering figures he had seen at the villa. They had come back. He said he was taken again, pulled from the roadside, into the same presence, the same environment that defied explanation. But this time, there was a difference. The fear was still there. But something else had changed. According to his later accounts, the beings were no longer simply observing him, they were expecting him, as if this meeting was not an accident. A pattern begins. 2 encounters, less than a month apart, both during patrol, both involving loss of contact, both ending with recovery under impossible conditions, and both leaving behind just enough evidence to raise questions, but never enough to answer them. After this night, the incidents would continue. More disappearances, more claims, more encounters that seem to follow a pattern. But something about this second event stands out. Because this is the moment the story changes. The first time could be dismissed, a mistake, a single unexplained event. But twice, under different conditions, with the same man and the same impossible elements, that's no longer coincidence. That's a pattern, and patterns suggest intent. The pattern that followed. After that second encounter, the story didn't end. According to Zanfretta, it escalated. He would later claim that the beings returned again and again, not once, not twice, but 9 more times over the next few years. Always at night, always alone, always the same pattern. Lights, silence, disappearance, and then return. Under hypnosis, he described repeated abductions, the same towering figures, the same craft, and a message that became more unsettling each time. They weren't just observing him, they were preparing him for something. Cover-up or collapse of evidence? Here's where the case takes a darker turn. The first encounters drew attention. Police were involved. Witnesses came forward. Physical traces were documented. But after that, the official trail goes cold. No major investigations into the later events, no clear follow-up, just a man telling a story that became harder and harder to prove. Was it dismissed, ignored, or quietly buried? Believers point to the number of witnesses on that first night, the consistency of his fear, the fact that Zanfretta never sought fame and never truly escaped what he claimed happened to him. Final thoughts. What makes this case so unsettling is not just what was seen, but what might have continued. After the reports stopped, after the attention faded, if Zanfretta was telling the truth, then the most important part of the story was never officially recorded. He told the same story for decades, and then one day, the encounters simply ended. No explanation, no closure, just silence. Zanfretta didn't disappear. He didn't confess to a hoax. He didn't dramatically change his account. He just stepped away. And that leaves us with the most powerful questions. Was he a man who experienced something he could never prove? Or someone who believed it so deeply, he never needed to change the story? Zanfretta claimed that the encounters didn't end with a single night of terror. According to his account, he was abducted 11 times between 1978 and 1981, each experience building on the last, as if whatever had taken an interest in him was not finished. At one point, he said he was given something, an object not of this world, an orb. Zanfretta claimed he handed the artifact over to authorities, and from that moment on, it was never seen again. No records, no confirmation, no way to prove it ever existed. His case remains one of the most documented alleged abduction stories in Italian UFO history. Yet despite the early attention, the deeper aspects of his claims were never fully pursued. Instead, they were quietly set aside, dismissed by some as psychological suggestion, by others as imagination under hypnosis. But if even a fraction of his story were true, then something extraordinary may have been overlooked or intentionally left unexplored. Thank you for watching Space, the Final Frontier, above and beyond an open-minded channel. We hope you have enjoyed this retelling of the Zanfretta abduction. Like and subscribe so you don't miss the next time we look into the above and beyond.